I've been locked alone in here for over a year. Until today, that is. I'm not locked in here against my will, oh no. I locked myself in here. But where is here exactly? Here is a bunker that I had constructed over the last 10 years. I started it back in '52, and I finished it just before those damn commies put those missiles in Cuba. After that happened, I knew that I had to save myself before something terrible happened. So I grabbed all that I could and I locked myself underground. I know they launched those missiles because I haven't heard any sort of movement outside for here in months. Ever since then, I've been here waiting, and waiting, until it's safe to return to the surface. My bunker sits 100 feet underground, only one way out, through a hatch in the top and through a long tunnel with only a ladder inside. And I've been alone this entire time, until now. Just last night, somebody came knocking at the hatch. I ignored it at first. I thought that I was hearing things because it's so far away, but they haven't let up for 3 days. Every morning he comes back and he starts back up again. I've been listening to that wretched banging for 3 days. I wasn't going to open it because I knew that if I let anybody else in, then I wouldn't have enough supplies to go around for more than one. But I felt bad that someone might actually be alive out there and needs my help. But I can't stand that noise anymore. It's been relentless. You must be yelling too because sometimes it'll stop for 10 seconds or so and then start all over again. Finally, when I couldn't last any longer, and I felt like my head was going to explode, I cracked. I made the ascent up the hatch and I listened closely. The man was yelling to let him in between the banging. I couldn't help but feel pity for the man, and some caution because he might have just been out to take the things that I worked so hard to achieve. And then I thought about how lonely I'd been, how long I've gone without human contact. And well, I couldn't resist it any longer. I gave into temptation and I yelled back at the man. I yelled to the man that I'm going to open the hatch and to move back. I turned the wheel and I threw the heavy door open, to see a man standing in the dirt next to the opening, his fists bloodied and broken from the constant banging. He wasn't a very physically imposing man, but not a small man to be sure. I eyed him with suspicion, but he looked so relieved that I had opened the door, that I couldn't help but feel like I had done something good. "How did you survive out here for so long?" I inquired, still eyeing the man, my body half in the ground and half out. "What do you mean? There's no danger out here." He responded a little confused. "What do you mean? Those missiles in Cuba are still there, right? War hasn't broken out yet?" I asked, confused. Because if the bombs hadn't dropped, why had the noise suddenly stopped? Why had the radio signals gone dead? Why was it always so quiet? "Oh, no, there's a war, but it doesn't involve the bombs. The Northeast had been evacuated and I came back to look for something that I had left out here," he said, gesturing towards a group of cabins nearby. "I'm assuming you didn't find what you were looking for," I said, looking at his empty hands. "No, nobody was there. I was headed back when I found the plans to your little shelter in the basement of one of the cabins, and I came only to find it locked." "Why do you want to get in? If there's no bombs, then what's the point of coming down here?" I asked, leaning in closer. "Can we talk about this inside? I don't think it's safe out here." "Okay, I'll go down first so I can keep an eye out on you," I said. "Turn the wheel to close the hatch when you enter." The man entered and I descended the rungs of the ladder until I reached the very bottom, keeping my eyes on him the whole time. I opened the door when I reached the bottom and I stepped into my shelter. The stranger was right behind me and he closed the door as he walked in, and then sat down at one of the chairs in the kitchen. I sat across from him and we both sat in silence for a moment. and then I asked him once again. "So what's about to happen?" I asked, looking at the stranger. "So you really don't know? The Soviets are invading, and if they lose the invasion, then the bombs are going off, no doubt." "They're invading?" I repeated, shocked. "That's what the government says anyway, and they've evacuated the entire south and northwest." "They haven't gotten here yet?" I said inquisitively. "I don't think they're really invading. I haven't heard so much as a peep since coming out here. Not even our own military's out here. I think they called the invasion off or we beat them and our government hasn't told us yet. They're always lying, and why would the Soviets invade if they have rockets? They would lose too many men to an invasion. It's not worth it to them. But better safe than sorry, am I right?" He said with a wide grin on his face. I knew that I needed to get in soon, and who would have known it's been occupied? "Do you have any communication with the outside world down here?" "Radio's been silent for months. I don't even have it on anymore," I said, still letting the stranger's story sink in. "Well, there's not much here, so I don't need to give you the grand tour. And now that we're splitting rations, I only have food for a few more months at the latest. After that, we will have to deal with that when it comes along." I explained to the man, both of us still sitting in the kitchen chairs. "We don't need to wait that long. We can leave here sooner once we know for sure there's no invasion," the man said matter-of-factly. We both continued sitting there, the man letting the new atmosphere of the place sink in. In my mind, I was glad that somebody else was here with me, but I couldn't help but feel slightly suspicious of the newcomer. I hadn't spoken to another soul in months, so I shrugged it off as anxiety for a change in my routine. We continued with the routine of living underground for the next couple of months. We rarely talked and just sat around doing pointless tasks to pass the time. But every time we did talk, he always brought up the possibility that it was a false alarm and that the surface was clear. But I wasn't about to risk everything I had worked for to be destroyed by a chance it was safe. When he wasn't talking about the surface being safe, he would be talking about all the government's lies and how they've been manipulative. It was really starting to get to me. He ate more food than I did too, but I never complained. I just acted like I didn't notice, and my resentment for him slowly grew. If he kept it up, we would be out of supplies in a matter of weeks. Now I avoided talking to him because it would always return to the topic of the surface. Chances are, if we returned to the surface, we would be met with a nuclear wasteland or staring down the barrels of Soviet rifles. Every time he said we should return and I dismissed him, he would bring it up again later, and again and again. Finally I snapped and we got into an argument about the whole thing. The solitude was starting to get to me and I let it all out on him. I've been alone with that man for 4 months now. Now we just go about our routine, some days speaking nothing. And the silence, oh the silence. It's a kind of silence that you can hear. It sounds like nothing, yet it makes the loudest noise. I can't take it anymore. I needed a change, and I'll be damned if he ruins everything for me. Nothing ever changes down here, even our daily conversation. He still brings up the topic of returning to the surface. I feel like he's trying to get rid of me, trying to steal everything that I've got for himself. That's why he's talking about the surface so much. That's why he's always going on about he's out to get me, because he wants it all to himself. The other day we really got into it. We were in the living room and he tried to bring it up again, and I responded with a smart retort. "If you believe all the shit that you say, then why the hell are you still here?" I asked him in an aggressive tone. "Because I don't want to go out there alone. Why don't you come with me?" he asked. "The hell I am. There's no telling what could be up there, and I sure don't want to be up there with you," I yelled in response. "What is that supposed to mean? If that's the case, then why are you down here with me?" he asked, standing up and stepping towards me. "What? You're the one who's down here with me. This is my place and all you've done is take advantage of my hospitality. You won't shut the hell up about all the lies and cover-ups done by the government. And you actually believe that bullshit. You're gonna get us both killed if you keep trying to leave. Oh, so you're some gracious host then. If you didn't want me down here, then why did you let me in the first place? We're gonna have to leave sometime and you know it. When that day comes, you won't turn down my offer, he said as he stormed out of the living room and into the bunk room. Now I know that he's trying to lure me out. He hasn't even made an offer other than to come up with him. I don't know what that whack job has planned, but I'm not falling for it. I'm not gonna let him leave and endanger us both. I should have never let him in the first place. I regret that every day. Every night I don't sleep, out of fear that he's going to try something, and now I see signs of him planning it everywhere. He sounds suspicious. Every time I see him, he looks suspicious too. Oh, how I would love to get rid of this parasite and have this place all to myself again. I can see it now, things back to the way they used to be. The peace and quiet that I once despised. I now long for that more than anything. At this moment in time, there wasn't very much I wouldn't do to fulfill that desire. The next day, we ran out of food. He lost it again and we got into another argument and he stormed off again, even angrier than last time. And once again my resentment grew to a full-blown hate. Everything that went wrong, I found a way in my mind depended on him. Maybe it was being confined in the space for a better part of a year, or how little I'd communicate with the only other inhabitant, but I started to get restless. He gives me weird looks now and we haven't spoken since the argument. He's going to do it soon because of the food problem. He's getting desperate. So now I wait for him to make his move and I will make him regret it. Oh, I can't wait for it to happen. Finally an excuse to rid myself of this freeloader. The night following the day that we ran out of supplies, I sat in bed thinking about this man's story. If the Soviets were invading then, why didn't he just walk back to our lines and get back to civilization? It didn't add up. He was hiding something. A reason for why he didn't want to go back to the rest of the country, but he didn't want to stay underground. Every day, my trust for the man wanes, more and more. I started keeping a knife on me wherever I went. I was afraid that he would try something so we could leave. Whenever he was asleep, I would quietly sharpen the blade, telling myself how I can't wait to use it on that bastard. I could imagine plunging it into him and hearing the quiet once again, the piercing noise of silence. Every day I fought the temptation to use it on him. Oh, how hard it was to resist the urge. But I knew that the day would come. Soon I could enjoy the silence again. The next night, he snuck out of the beds and tried to make a break for it. I was ready for him though. I knew this was going to happen tonight, so I stayed up and I waited for him to try it. He left the room and made a break towards the door to the ladder. I jumped out of my bed, grabbed the knife out of my pillowcase, and I ran after him. He had to slow down to open the door, and even though the room was 20 feet across, I closed the distance between us in no time at all, and I tackled the man from behind. "Get off of me, I'm getting out of here," he yelled, trying to throw me off of him. "You don't know what you're doing, you're gonna kill both of us." I yelled as I pinned him down, and I stabbed the knife downwards in an arc towards his chest. He saw the blade and tried to roll to the side, and the blade caught him in his side. The knife was lodged in between his ribs, so I resorted to my fist and I started throwing punches towards his face. One punch squarely landed on his nose and I felt a crack beneath my hand and hot blood squirted all over my fist and his face. He yelled and turned over and kicked me off. He lunged for the ladder and tried to make his way up, yelling in pain from the knife lodged in his side. I grabbed on the ladder as well and tried to grab his leg, but he kicked down and landed a hit squarely on my forehead. He kept going and I kept following. He made it to the top and I was right below him. I reached up and I grabbed his feet and I pulled it from the rungs that were slippery from his blood. He let out a cry as he lost his balance and he fell backwards down the shaft and plummeted towards the bottom of the tunnel. I heard him hit the sides on his way down, and he landed with a sickening crunch at the bottom. I climbed down and making sure not to slip on the man's blood, which now stained the walls of the space as well. I reached the bottom of the bladder and I saw the man's lifeless body, bent and broken, laying in a heap at the foot of the ladder. He was dead. And come to think of it, I never even knew his name. I had to do it though. He would have killed me, but now that he was gone, the silence was back. Oh, the dreaded silence, so loud and so quiet all at once. I walked into the living room and I reclined in a chair and just listened. And I swear that I heard the sound of cars. Not just cars, but the sound of people too. I must have been hallucinating. There was no way. I listened harder, straining myself to hear. And sure enough, there it was. The sound of people talking. I followed the sound back up the ladder, slippery with blood, into the base of the hatch. The voices were louder now. It sounded like somebody was yelling. I grabbed the hatch and I turned it, throwing open the heavy door once again. Outside, it was bright and sunny, and nearby the highway was littered with cars, and two people arguing over a flat tire on the side of the road. He was right. He was an honest man who hadn't lied to me. His theories were right, and I had killed him for it. And I had enjoyed what I had done. Because now I can once again live in relative peace and quiet.